When we're talking about figuring out exactly how much you should eat for a physique goal, the part that I find that most people tend to skip is how much are you currently eating? How much are you eating right now? And I feel like this is something that is so easily skipped because of the fact that, especially when we're talking about women that are over the age of 40, they're busier, they don't have a lot of time, they don't like, getting down into like the nitty-gritty details of something. It's like, just tell me what to do. But when you don't have that one little piece of the puzzle, even if someone is telling you what to do based on what should work for you, there's always going to be that big question mark as to whether it will work for you. So really, regardless of what type of diet that you're looking for, whether you are somebody who is newer to the eat more to weigh less lifestyle and you're trying to figure out how to eat more for weight loss, whether you're somebody that's trying to figure out how to, cut your carbs or fast, or whether Weight Watchers will work for you, or your doctor just told you something specific that you have to like take out of your diet, whatever the case is, if you're trying to figure out how much to eat for fat loss or even muscle gain without knowing how much you eat right now, you are going to be chasing your tail. There's no way to know if you don't stop and take the time to figure out where you are now. So when you take that piece, let me show you how that plays into all of the other pieces, because literally, like, obviously a lot of times there's kind of the blanket answer, especially if I'm like answering DMs or if somebody's asking me really quickly. It's just like, okay, go to my website, there's a calculator, it should tell you. Or if you have somebody that's like wearing a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something like that, it's like, okay, go look at those things. But let me tell you how this one little piece plays in and why it's so key and so critical for doing, and why I make every client that I work with figure this part out first. So before I tell a client exactly how much they should eat, we spend time doing this piece, even if they're not doing it currently. So if someone comes to me and they're not currently logging their food on MyFitnessPal or any other type of like app or something like that, they don't have a physical log, they haven't been writing it down with a notebook, whatever the thing is, we will stop and make them go through a period of tracking first, and then we will rewind it back to plugging in that number into the other pieces. And so this is how the other pieces work. Once we know how much you're eating right now, so if you don't know, stop and go figure it out. Either take some time to open up one of those apps and, log what you've eaten over the past few days. I would usually start with at least like a 3-day food diary or journal of some sort, and then progress from there. I prefer 3 weeks or more, but usually that's what I have. When someone first starts working with me, I ask them to submit me what they've eaten the last 3 days. And if they haven't been paying attention, then I say, wait 3 days and then tell me what you've been eating. Start today, go 3 days and tell me. Once they submit that, the first thing that I'll ask them is, okay, so now, especially if I'm only looking at a small chunk of time, if this is somebody who has been consistently like logging their food into MyFitnessPal or something for years, then I don't have to ask the second question. But for someone who had blank, and then I say, how much are you eating now? And then they log 3 days and give me the information, or they backlog 3 days and give me the information, then my next question is going to be, how long have you eaten that way? So I want to know how representative this is of what you've been doing up until now. So like, the reason for that is because a lot of times once we do start logging our food, especially if you haven't before, as you become aware of what you're eating, sometimes by default, sometimes on purpose, it changes what you're eating. So like, because of your awareness level of having to plug it in and knowing that someone is going to look at it, even if it's for yourself, you start changing what you're eating. You don't have that extra bite. You don't have the 3 extra cookies. You put the chips back or something like that. Like, you tend to, like, now you have awareness, you're not mindless eating, so therefore it can change those things. So that's why I'll ask that second question: how normal is this level of eating for you? So if somebody gives me their diary, their food diary, and it's showing that, okay, they're eating 2,300 calories and 150 grams of protein, and like 3 days ago or last week or whatever the thing is, they were severely under eating, but because they know that I'm about eating, they've increased their calories, or maybe they weren't hardly eating any protein protein at all. But again, because they know that I'm looking, they're doing that. And again, same thing changed with yourself. So once you take that time to stop, log the food for 3 days, weeks, however long you're able to do it before holding off on this next step, that's going to help you then to ask, okay, how normal is this for me? That's the reason why I usually like to stretch it out past it. If I get any sense of hesitancy with that person of, I mean, it's pretty usual for me. I'm like, okay, well, let's wait a week and see how usual it is. And let's wait another week and see how usual it is. And we try to stretch that period out. The reason for that is because then that plays into the next step. So once you understand how much you're currently eating right now and how long you've been eating the amount that you're currently eating, then you can go into the next piece, which is where most people start. This is most people's step one is how much should I be eating? And you can find this out in a various amount of ways. So this could be where you Google some kind of calculator and figure out like how much should I be eating. You can obviously, like if it's me, I'm going to send somebody to my website if they don't have like a Apple Watch or Fitbit or something like that. That's always going to be a good place to start. A lot of times I like to play those things against each other. So I send them to a calculator. Again, this is a DIYer. If I'm working with someone, I'm going to run the calculation for them. But these are the calculations that I'm running. So I'll tell the person, go to the website, find out how much you should be eating for maintenance level, because like what's happening right now with if the amount that you're eating, are you maintaining at that amount? Are you losing weight at that amount? Are you gaining weight at that amount? Usually it's either maintaining or gaining weight. Typically people don't come to me because they're just losing weight and they can't understand why. So once you know, okay, this is the amount that I've been eating this way for X amount of time. So like this is about right for me. And I've been either gaining or losing. What amount should I be eating? Like what should my maintenance levels be? You can find that out from the calculations. Use any random calculator if you like. Go to my website if you like. Obviously, I prefer that. If you have a Fitbit, Apple Watch, something of that nature that is clocking your movements, you can look at those and check out what your average calorie burn is, especially if you tend to wear it pretty frequently, like throughout the day. That can tell you what your average burn is. And usually I like to pit those against each other. So find the calculation, find out what your, heart rate pedometer type situation is telling you that you should be eating, like what are you burning, and see how those numbers line up. Usually they're pretty dead on. So if somebody is wearing Apple Watch and they are going and doing the calculation over on my website, typically the number that the Apple Watch is giving them, the number that the calculator is giving them is going to be pretty dead on. If there's some discrepancy, usually it's going to be user error on the calculator side. They've probably picked an activity level or something that is not accurate. So usually if that happens, it's typically the watch or device is showing a higher number than the calculator is. And that's because you're wearing the device, it's on you, versus the calculation. We can finagle those things a little bit. So if the watch, device, whatever is showing you a higher number than the calculation is, double check that you've put in the right activity level. Put in the right activity level, they're probably dead on. So now you have those numbers, right? So you know this is what I've been eating, this is how long I've been eating that way, and here's where I should be eating for like the results that I'm getting right now for, let's just say, maintenance. So if I've been eating this way and I've been in a plateau, I can't lose weight no matter what, I'm maintaining. This is what I've been eating to maintain it. This is what I should be eating to maintain it. Now you can take those numbers and figure out where that discrepancy is of, okay, so based on my Fitbit, Apple Watch, Kiki's calculator, whatever the thing is, based on all of these calculations, and you can run the calculator however many times you like, depending on how anal you are about it, get an average number, don't care. The point is, once you have that number, the like theoretical number based on all the devices and calculations, and then the real number based on what you've actually been inputting, how close are those? Okay, that's going to be a big thing too. So this is like I said, the steps that I would go through myself if it was a client, and the steps that if you're DIYing, you would need to take yourself through. So let's say that you have looked at you've done your food journal, you've taken like a few weeks out to like really take this seriously. Maybe you've done it for like 3 weeks straight, a month, maybe a couple of months. You just start out just logging your food. You find out you've been averaging about 1,800 calories, on average. And then you run the calculator, look at your Apple Watch, look at your Fitbit. This is giving you an average of about 2,400 calories of where you should be eating and maintain. You're eating 1,800 and you're not losing at all. You should be eating at 2,400. Now, that's a pretty big gap. This number is way higher than this number. That's where usually people kind of get, shook up a little bit because it's like, how is it possible that I would eat that number if I'm already not losing at this number? Therein lies the big question. That's the reason why you do that exercise first, because that is what you want to know. Because if you run these calculations and you either don't know that you've been eating 1,800 or you ignore the fact that you're eating 1,800 and you run the calculator and it says, hey, on average, you're burning about 2,400 calories. To lose weight, you should be eating 2,100 calories. All these are obviously like numbers that I'm making up, but just to give you that example. So if it's saying you should be eating 2,100 calories for weight loss and you're eating 1,800 calories right now, what do you think is going to happen if you increase your calories by 300? You're probably going to gain weight. Eating the amount that you should be eating for fat loss. That is what's going to happen. That's the reason why that first number is so important and why a lot of people get confused. So some people do know that number and then they run this calculation and they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense because that's going to have me eating more, which obviously is the point here, right? And so then they walk away and don't do it at all. Other people don't know this number at all, run this calculation and say, all right, I should be eating 2,100 for fat loss. And they just start eating 2,100 for fat loss and they gain and they don't understand why. Or people are applying that. This is the same thing that people apply in random diets. Maybe this diet, you should be eating at 2,100 and you're actually eating at 2,500, but then you go and you just do a random diet that has you eating 1,500 calories. Like, yes, you lose weight, but you dropped way more calories than was actually necessary. You didn't have to go that far because of the fact that you were already at 2,500. You could have just went to 2,100. So that's the reason why understanding all of these numbers, as much as it seems like a pain in the butt, like I say, because we're talking to grown women, women that are over the age of 40, women that have been around the block a time or two, women that have, like full-time like jobs or schedules, kids, families, husbands, like whatever the case may be, they have so many other things going on that stopping and doing something like this seems so tedious. And it's like, just tell me what to do. And the fact is that no one can tell you what to do if you don't have that piece of the puzzle first. You have to know that because the other things play into it. So let's say you're that person that is currently eating at 1,800 and then you go to do the calculation and you should be at 2,500. What are you supposed to do then? Well, you have a choice. You can either heal your metabolism and get to the number that you should be, and then go to the 2,100 and actually, cut and go through a proper fat loss phase that's not going to damage your metabolism. Or, you can also be a grown up on the other end about it and say, well, if I'm at 1,800, there's nowhere to go but down because I refuse to go up. I refuse to heal my metabolism. I refuse to rebuild muscle mass. I refuse to do those things. So there's nowhere to go but down. Just know all the consequences that come with going down, which is an entirely different episode about all of the things that start happening when you choose that route. But again, we're all adults here, so it's important to understand what your choices are when you are making that call. And you cannot understand what your choices are when you're making that call if you're not doing step number one. If you're skipping that step, then you're going to keep throwing darts in the dark, throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping that something works, and not being able to figure out or understand when something does seem to work, why it worked, or when something doesn't work, why it didn't. You're always going to be confused. You're always going to be frustrated. You're always going to feel like you're spinning your wheels. You're always going to feel like, I don't understand why I've done everything and nothing works, because you're skipping the biggest step of all of it, the most tedious, underestimated, underrated, overlooked step, because it's like, "Ugh, I just don't want to do all that." Well, when you don't do that part, how much time are you wasting? If that adds another 2 to 3 years to your journey because of the fact that you just want to bury your head in the sand and not know step number one, you can just keep trying things and live in a constant state of plateau and frustration. So, if you want to know how much you should eat, follow those steps and remember to start at step number one. Every other step is going to depend on it. So, stop and take the time to do it, even if it's information that you don't have right now, even if you feel like that's going to hold me up to try to get that. The more accurate that you can get with this number, the more options that you have, the more you understand what your options are, and the more you can take an educated path of which direction that you're going to go and understand what's going to happen when you get there. So figure out what that top number is. How much are you currently eating? How much should you be eating? Then you can move into what are your goals? What should you be eating for your goals? And in which direction is that from where you are now? And what direction, like, should it be? So if you get to that point and now the math ain't mathing, like it doesn't make sense anymore because you're like, wait a minute, so I would have to go up in order for this to work. That is good information for you to know because now you have a choice. It's not information for you to ignore just because you don't want to make the choice. So hopefully that I know gave probably a more nuanced answer to the question that you would like. I could definitely say all of the other things. Yes, go to the website and run the calculator. Yes, get some type of wearable. There's so many of them now that will give you that information. Like, you shouldn't be hung up on that piece anymore. There's more than enough ways to figure out how much you should be eating, but first and foremost, figure out how much you're eating now. Then you can move forward with the next steps and figure out what does it look like to build muscle or lose fat from there based on what that information is telling you. So thank you for joining today. And if you want more information about how this process works for a DIYer, I highly recommend checking out the metabolism reset information that's inside of the starter kit if you're somebody who's just getting started. If you're pretty familiar with this world and you want to skip straight to this part and like really get to the nitty-gritty of how I would work through this process with a client, I recommend the Master Your Metabolism Masterclass. That information, again, it's one of those things where like it gets really tedious, but I give you the breakdown of how to do this if you're somebody who's really serious about DIYing and putting in the elbow grease to get this done. Other than that, you can always book a call and find out if, we're a good fit for one-to-one, and I can do all of those things for you. Obviously, those are all going to be different levels depending upon where you are, but you do have options if this is something that you are looking to actually solve and take your head out of the sand and really start doing it. There are definitely options available for you, and I highly recommend picking one and moving forward on that road. If you have any questions, be sure to post them below or shoot me an email, and maybe your question will end up featured on one of these episodes. So thank you guys for joining, and I will see you in the next one.